Zenolite is the modern alternative to glass with the big advantage that it's easy to work on site. So here are my top 10 tips. Now it's perfectly possible to cut even the most elaborate shapes on site. All you need to do is follow these simple rules. When you're cutting, remember to do it at room temperature. If the sheet has been in the van overnight, bring it in and let it acclimatise before you begin drilling or cutting. When you're cutting, make sure the material is safely clamped with the show face, that is the non-coloured side, down. Use a sharp saw, preferably a plunge saw, or if you're using a circular saw, make sure it's a fine-tooth blade suitable for plastics or aluminium. Always use sacrificial board under the material that you're cutting. If you're cutting out socket apertures or anything else, round off the corners by drilling first. When you're drilling, make sure you do it from the show face. There's a label to tell you which side is which, but if you're working on offcuts, make sure you don't lose track of this. You can easily tell which is the show face by looking at the material end on. Never drill any closer than 10mm from the edge. Use a high-speed steel bit. If you want to do larger holes, use a hole saw at moderate speed. Before you stick the material to the wall, you need to sand the back of it. That is the coloured side. Don't worry about sanding the colour off because it's co-extruded, it's very well stuck on there. Use the sanding pads that are supplied in the installation kit and work in a circular motion. Sanding the edges after you've cut them will help eliminate any micro crazing or cracking. When you're screw fixing, you need a minimum clearance of at least 2mm around that screw. Often you can leave more because the screw hole is covered by some kind of decorative shroud. All wall substrates must be clean, smooth, dry and flat. If you're sticking onto tiles, clean the tiles thoroughly to make sure there's no residue of soap. Zenolite can be bought in large panels, which is a tremendous advantage because it means in a shower like this you don't have to have a central joint. But if you're working on a panel, make sure that you measure and mark accurately. Don't forget about those expansion gaps. Make sure you measure and mark your holes and you leave the clearance. And when it comes to the bottom, fitting it to the shower tray or the wet room as this is, you have to fit it on top and don't trap it behind the floor. I can't emphasize how important it is to measure, make sure that you get all those dimensions right before you start cutting. Because the worst thing is, if you've got to cut a tiny slither off this sheet afterwards to make it fit, that's when you start to get problems. So, as I say, measure twice, I say measure 3 times, cut once. Zenolite, with its clean, smooth lines, is the ideal material for kitchen splashbacks, and it's versatile because if a customer suddenly decides that they want an extra socket in place, you can do it. But if you're using it behind a hob, make sure that hob is an electric hob. You can use induction or conventional electric hob, but give 50mm clearance. If it's a gas hob, you can use the glass colour matched panels or they're brushed aluminium. Now, although this material should always be worked and fitted at room temperature, when it's actually on the wall, it can expand and contract. So we recommend that you leave 4mm around the edge to accommodate that expansion. Now, if you look here, that expansion gap is actually happening behind the tiles, so you don't even see it. And similarly, where it goes into this light strip here, there's a small bit of expansion there, but the rest of the expansion is taking place at the top of the panel. But so long as you remember to leave that and don't trap it, you'll be fine. If you're drilling and fixing, you don't want to trap it in that position. So we recommend that you leave a clearance around the screw, say 2mm, to allow that movement. And also, when you're fixing it, don't over tighten that screw. If you're joining sheets together, you can do it with a silicone joint in exactly the same way as you would with glass, but you can also get these color coordinated strips which allow a small amount of expansion in there, but make sure that the other end is free so the expansion can take place along the sheet. Now, one of the great advantages is that it's hygienic and easy to clean, just like glass, so it's a good alternative to tiles. But use the microfiber cloth, and also make sure that if you're using a cleaner, it's solvent free. It's very important to check the small print and check that your cleaner has no solvent in it. There are plenty of eco-friendly, solvent-free cleaners on the market, so make sure you use one of those. And when you're using sealants and adhesive, use the sealant and adhesive that is included in the fixing pack. That is a neutral curing silicone.